let's just get to the good stuff. If you're someone that's watched my videos before, which, to be fair, you probably haven't, you might be thinking that this is something that's coming out of nowhere. Sure, I do talk about horror media quite a bit, and I am quite a prolific yapper, but I haven't really made anything about mascot horror topics. Ignore that. Actually, don't I really liked animating that one. But like I've said in my previous video, I've only recently started engaging in horror media without any proxies like Let's Plays. However, I'm no stranger to the FNAF space, being a very early fan back in 2014, like most early 20-somethings, and like most starving artists, most of my consumption of FNAF content comes from YouTube videos like Let's Plays or reviews. Now, I'm not really one to talk about fan games, if my catalog of like 4 videos can attest to. I'm more someone that would prefer to take a gander and move on, but I'll make an exception just this once because this FNAF fan game I found really just speaks to me on a creative level. As pretentious as that sounds, that and its presentation really managed to set itself apart from the majority of FNAF adjacent mascot horror media I've seen for quite some time. The game I'm talking about is Graveyard Shift at Freddy's, a fan game developed by There's No Stake. It's intended to be a reimagining of the first FNAF game, a completely new continuity not attached to any pre-existing lore, although there are lots of references and inspirations taken from previous FNAF works, fan-made and official. Keep in mind, the whole game isn't out yet, but there is a demo available right now, link in the description by the way. I started writing this script before that demo came out, so initially what really drew me in was the promotion material that I got in my YouTube recommendations, which really cemented this game as my personal favorite upcoming fan project. Little Snake Guy, my beloved. Also justice for Gummigoo, but we're not talking about that right now. Before I get any further, I want to disclaim that I'm not really going to be doing any of that FNAF fan game reviewer stuff where I meticulously go over the specific mechanics of each and every character. That'd be spoiling the surprise, and I really want people to go into this demo blind to get the most out of the experience like I did. I'll explain the basic office mechanics to get you primed and ready if you want, but no further, since I would consider those spoilers. Or, if you're stubborn, just wait a few weeks or something for someone like Plane Trace or Go Motion or whoever to talk about it. Now, this isn't your garden variety robot furries that hate minimum wage earners simulator. The stylings of this game proudly displays its inspirations, from the animatronic designs, gameplay mechanics, atmospheric choices, and aesthetic presentation. The style that this game has going for itself is, in a word, immaculate. It comes with its own charm, taking cues from the fandom's past while still forming its own unique, beautiful, and horrific voice. When I talk about this creator's style and voice, I want to refer to each individual aspect of this game that proudly wears inspirations from the fandom's history, combining these aspects and putting on a new, unique spin on each and every one of them in order to create some brand new, very fresh experience. Like taking old rice and asking a shrimp to fry it. First things first, let's start off by addressing the menu. This references a new fandom occurrence, referencing the FNAF ransomware trend that began not too long ago. It's quite astounding that something so recent was put into a game like this so quickly, but it also serves as more than just a reference. The ransomware aesthetic brings together this feeling of uneasiness, the chaotic and ear-bleeding audio only sending forth the message that you should not be here. It's almost like an implicit threat to you in the real world. The exit game button labeled hide rather than quit game. Little pieces of flavor text that just add to the intended atmosphere. The text used in the menus have this subtle chromatic aberration effect to them that brings to mind old monitors. The play button and the quit button also jitter around frantically, almost like they're both trying to get the player's attention, but in very different ways. The play button is jittering around in a chaotic fashion, energetic, or perhaps on the cusp of utter mania. The text subtly duplicating itself could be a reference to the fracturing mental state of the player, or character, or it could be the eagerness of the animatronics to get a chance to tear you apart. The exit button, hide, moves in a much more constrained manner, yet still jittery. It's ordered, relatively speaking, in the chaos of the menu. A subtle association that leaving is what a sensible person would do rather than choose to play the clearly malicious software. Little details like these add up when building your game's tone. Let's begin discussing the audio design for this menu too. You can hear an assortment of early 2000s internet-esque sounds, like what could be an answering machine dying or the screeching of dial-up internet. It could be a little reminder of what it was like on the early internet, especially if you've had any run-ins with more harmful programs. However, if you continue to linger on this menu for long enough, the static behind the Graveyard Shift logo fades away, and the audio changes, shifting from the chaotic screeching to a long, droning flat line, almost as if the machines themselves have begun to die. Staying further still, the sounds of a baby crying can be heard, and the button that once let you leave stops working, replaced with, and when you... This whole scene is pretty damn amazing in and of itself, and we haven't even started the game yet. From the initial establishment of the menu being such a vast departure from the more professional or traditional looking menu screens of the past, letting this one differentiate itself right off the bat. Those more clued into FNAF fangame spaces might know that this little idle sequence may have also taken inspiration from the Treasure Island fangame, where if you were to idle on the main menu, you'd be jump scared and the game would close. More little nods to fandom history with its own little spin on it. Although, okay, this might be my brain rot going hard, but I can't really take this face seriously because it reminds me of this stupid-ass gif. A little thing to note when starting the game is that the demo of this game actually has a discrepancy between this build and the gameplay preview uploaded to There's No Stakes YouTube channel. There used to be a live system, evident right before the night began. I can't tell if the live system was intended to be implemented from the start and got scrapped later, or if presenting such a system in the promotional material was actually a nod to the fact that the original FNAF was once planned to use a live system, but that was also scrapped. It may be a bit much, but considering the lengths that this developers went to include so much FNAF culture in their game, I wouldn't put it past them. But moving forward, let's take a look at the game itself. And like many other games before it, the game starts with an empty room and a phone call.
Good evening. As I'm sure you're aware, I wanted to call you tonight to help you settle in. I'm not going to waste your time, so let's cut straight to it. There should be a monitoring system in your workspace. Open it, please. Now, be warned, that old rickety system is a bit finicky, to say the least. You can't switch the cameras yourself, but you can mess with the speed at which they change. There's also an alarm, which can be used to scare away or distract anyone who might be up to no good. I'd recommend using it if you're in a situation where you see someone where they shouldn't normally be. However, I wouldn't use it too much considering they may start ignoring it entirely. Why am I saying this? Simple. To prepare you. People have been crazy about this place, especially recently, and I wouldn't be too shocked if somebody broke in again. Still wonder what happened to that kid. Now, well. Two more things. The signal here is a bit rough. If you notice you're starting to lose connection on your monitor, just turn your router off for a second and flip it back on. As for the second thing, you may have noticed the ticket booth in front of you. Where's the glass? Don't ask, nor is it your business to know. What is your business is that you could use that shutter if you're put in a dangerous situation where somebody's in front of you. The window is also marked on your camera mount, so you should be able to get a good idea of the building's layout. That's pretty much it. Just keep all that garbage in mind and you'll be set. If you didn't, well, too bad.
The call itself is very matter-of-fact, giving you the bare essential rundown of your tools. It is a tutorial in a sense, but unlike many other fan games, this one doesn't give you any of the mechanics of the actual animatronics right off the bat. However, if you're perceptive enough, you can figure it out on your own, but if you can't, you're going to be punished. This game isn't one that's going to hold your hand. The only hints that you have come from right before the night begins, and when you die. Looking at the animatronic designs that this game shows off, you can see some clear inspirations from the style of Baddington's FNAF animatronics, going for a more authentic style of animatronic, with faceplates for Bonnie and Freddy resembling those used by places like Showbiz Pizza as opposed to the vanilla designs. The cameras in this game function a lot differently than pretty much every FNAF fan game out there. Why, you may ask? Well, it's because you have no control over which camera you're viewing. The currently viewed camera rotates on a preset pattern clockwise around the establishment, only changing when the on-screen switch timer depletes. You cannot click on any buttons to pick a specific camera. If you miss something going on in Cam 5, you need to go through the entire camera rotation so you can get back to Cam 5. This may sound a bit frustrating at first, but you have the option to speed up the rate at which the cameras change. But if you're not attentive, you can speed right past the camera you intended to go to in the first place and have to do the little roundabout again. Now, this mechanic may appear arbitrary at first. Why limit the player's access to the camera system? Well, the main way that you manipulate the behavior of the animatronics is with the building's alarm system, and there are critical times where you need to be on specific cameras when an animatronic is in a critical position. That's when you need to sound the alarms. But if you aren't able to do so for whatever reason, expect the worst. While this mechanic functions differently, there is clear inspiration taken from the mechanics of FNAF 3, or Mary's Arcade, and how the cameras take such an important role in staying alive. This style of mechanic adding a much more strategic style of gameplay that I can appreciate. A little piece of trivia is that the alarm sound used in most of the rooms of the establishment is one typically used for pedestrian crossings in different countries. One of the game's central themes is that panic is your greatest enemy. When you panic, you're not in clear headspace to carefully pick apart what you need to do. There are times where you need to stay on certain cameras to keep tabs on particular threats, and there are other times where you have to rush through the cameras to find others. However, since you're not in control of the cameras, you need to weigh your options. The game's risk-reward comes in the form of how you prioritize your threats. Being level-headed and operating in a way that handles this pressure well is the path to victory. There are some mechanics put in place to interrupt your concentration. Occasionally, the video quality of the camera will start to resemble less CCTV footage and more like a Maxor video. To unfuck your monitor, you're going to have to put it down and restart your internet router, because while this game does take place in 2017, keep in mind, you're still running on fast food Wi-Fi. I'd also like to note that when you boot up your cameras, you aren't loading up a Fazbear product, but something by Honeysoft. I don't believe that this has any lore attached to it, but it's a subtle piece of world building that the Bear Corporation isn't the only one out there. It also could be a little cute reference to bears loving honey, little layers on top of layers. In addition, you can look at the camera inside of your office, and yes, there is a camera inside of your office. From here, you can see an empty animatronic head inside of what looks like a locker. This isn't anything dangerous, but it's the empty animatronic head of this universe's Sparky the dog. You can see the render much more clearly in the material posted to the developer's Game Jolt page. Now, if you've been attentive, you may have noticed your own position on the map. The thing about it is that there are actually 3 openings to your office. The thing about that is that there's no option for you to lock your doors. You don't have any fancy metal blast doors in this game, just normal establishment doors that don't even lock. The only thing that you can do is close the window right in front of you. The window itself I find to be a little nod to Candy's, but unlike Candy's, this window doesn't have the traditional power supply. The building of this game has infinite power. The flashlights and cameras don't cost anything, but what does cost a resource is keeping the window closed. When you close the window's metal shutters, it's kept in place by hydraulics, and how long those can be kept down is marked by this green bar to the side. Notice how fast this thing drains. You're only able to keep it down for short periods of time, typically just long enough for an animatronic to go away if you're using it sparingly. But if there's still charge left when you open it again, it'll quickly recharge. Although, if you keep the shutters down for too long, they'll go into a forced cooldown where you can't pull down the shutters at all until the hydraulic bar fills back up to full. It's a punishment for panicking. If you try to hide behind the metal sheet too early or too much, you won't have it when you need it the most. You're likely going to run out of charge before what you're hiding from can leave, leading to death. I want to analyze the subtle genius of this window mechanic from an immersion and a gameplay standpoint. As said before, I see this window as a nice nod to Candy's as well as to FNAF 2, both of them featuring massive metal paths for monsters to get to you. However, unlike FNAF 2 or Candy's, the mechanic to actually prevent your death is a lot more proactive on your part. Unlike the press of a door button or wearing a mask, this game makes you physically grab the handle of the window's metal shutters in order to keep yourself from dying. Now this may also be flavor, but it's important to note how different this is just from pressing a single button or flicking your mouse down to a prompt at the bottom of your screen. This simple change also improves immersion a lot. You have to manually shut the barrier between you and certain death. It is a small change, but it's one that makes your encounters more intimate and immersive compared to just a simple press of a button. The little cartoon designs on the in-game art's also really cute and simple. Those combined with the shutters and office really bring together a dingy, grimy food place atmosphere that I love. The same goes for the flashing your flashlight, as your Windows light is attached to a prompt on the wall, not a key on your keyboard. You even have to flip open a little protective plastic casing on it when your night starts. So there's some inherent dread to turning on your light, as when something eventually does make its way to your window, you have to scramble to get that flimsy metal sheet between you and your would-be killer. You may have also noticed on the sheet, but this isn't Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, but Freddy Bear's Eatery and Fun, in addition to Foxy not quite looking like himself. That's because this reimagining is using old scrapped FNAF 1 concepts. Those more familiar with the series past would know that Freddy's original intended name was Freddy Bear, and before Foxy the Pirate, there was originally a wolf animatronic that got scrapped. This game brings back a lot of those concepts, with Freddy Bear and Captain Wolfgang, in addition to some new changes to the place like how the establishment isn't a pizzeria anymore, but a buffet. Just more spins on old concepts. Although, if I had to imagine what the actual replacement looked like...
Excuse me, what the actual fuck are you doing in my house?
Nah, that's stupid. Now, I've covered the bare basics of what to expect when you play this game. It's quite the fantastic example of game design mingling with immersion and atmosphere. However, there's something I haven't quite covered yet. Now, this may not be orthodox, but let's take a look at how you die. Oops, wrong clip. Okay, this should be the real one. Warning for those of you with epilepsy or photosensitivity. Timestamp on screen now. The jump scare sequences in this game are absolutely stellar. The one I just played is just an example of the extra mile that the creator went through with crafting this game. Most fan games or even official releases often rely on some variant of the set canned animation for a specific animatronic. However, this game vastly differentiates itself with different jump scares available depending on the situation the player's mistakes make, be it not closing the window on time, the window opening while an animatronic is still there, someone sneaking in through the doors, and some more. What I'm sure you're most interested in is the sequence that happens right after you're caught. Usually, when you're killed in a FNAF game, you're killed and sent right back to the menu, and if the death feels particularly spicy, add in a death minigame. But this is Graveyard Shift at Freddy's, so instead of the usual static cut to game over screen, you get this.
When I found you, you were barely recognizable. Your eyes had been completely torn out, your rib cage exposed. One of your hands was missing entirely. If it weren't for the fact that I hired you prior, I wouldn't have had any idea who you were before they ruined you. I'll be honest, it was pretty tough getting you cleaned up. They really went wild on you, but I guess that's what happens when rabid dogs aren't fed. You didn't deserve what happened to you. It's my fault that you were put into this position. Your sacrifice will not have been in vain, as you've brought me time. Time I can work with. Time I can use to end this madness I've created. I'm sorry, Mr. Schmidt. I wish there was more I could have done for you.
It's quite the departure from the usual death sequences in FNAF games, but you can see the inspirations from FNAF VHS and analog horror. The fact that there is a corpse, presumably your own, put on display is truly unnerving, especially with the FNAF series' aversion to graphic depictions of violence. The more monochromatic look on the corpse also brings to mind the visual style of something like A Shadow Over Freddy's, more inspirations twisted into new stuff. Now, let's move on to the text itself. This text is unlike most pieces of post-death FNAF content that games like this tend to show off, that being depicting the aftermath of your own death and the reactions of those involved. Usually, when you die, you're sent to death minigames that tell the story of the game or events of the past, but this is a very fresh and unique take, your own death not necessarily being the be-all end-all of the universe, more akin to a bad ending of the game rather than a game over with your boss swearing to avenge you. What I would like to note is how different that these animatronics behave compared to those from the original series. Yes, they do try to murder you, but in a way that's much more immediately visceral compared to the classic FNAF crew, opting for immediate bodily mutilation rather than stuffing you in a Temu Iron Maiden. The behavior of these animatronics is exacerbated by the way that they're designed. A closer look at Bonnie shows that his eyes are bloodshot, despite supposedly just being a robot. There's a biological component to them to some extent, your phone guy referring to them as akin to rabid dogs or starving animals. It's possible that they feed on night guards, not just kill them for fun. I've seen in some of their animations, like the eager glee or a hunter's anticipation that Bonnie conveys when he catches you or spots you in the office from your window. It's possible that these things aren't haunted by kids, but rather possessed by demons, but that's just speculation. The game itself isn't completely out yet, so all I have is speculation. However, it's speculation that's backed by some design choices and little features incorporated in each of the robots. Going into this too much risks spoiling some surprises, so I won't be going into it too much, and the script has become long enough as is. That said, I hope I was able to convey to you just why this game is one of the most underrated new upcoming fan game releases I've seen in a really, really long time. I haven't felt this in tune with the FNAF series for quite a few years now, but this entry really reminded me of why I love the series in the first place. It's unashamed of its inspirations, a love letter to the FNAF space as a whole, not going for the vast graphic fidelity or trying to be the next big thing, but what it does have is a lot of heart and soul. Some of those things possibly ripped out of unfortunate players, but heart and soul and credit card information nonetheless. I will definitely be playing the full release of this game, and I hope I've been able to convince you to at least give it a shot yourself. I may have been giving away a bit too much at times, but I did omit quite a bit, quite like how the animatronics actually function mechanically and parts of the atmosphere. I'm leaving little surprises like that for you to find for yourself. Anyways, thanks for coming to listen to me, serve you an extra helping of yapperoni and cheese once again, and I'm forever grateful for your time. Once again, stay safe, and good night.
Petit